Now I invite Dr. Kalyan, who is going to talk about, you have the AGP graph, and he's going to talk about how to interpret the AGP graph, and then he will throw up some cases. And after his initial presentation, this cases he's going to throw up for discussion, and Dr. Manoj Chawla will also have some cases to discuss. So over to you, Dr. Kalyan. Please make it interactive and get the audience into the picture.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Uni, for giving me this opportunity, distinguished chair speakers. So I'm Dr. Kalyan. I will be mainly focusing on AGP today because there's been a lot of discussion about what is TIR, so I'm going to skip those slides. I am associated with the AGP Clinical Academy and Abbott in giving these talks. So what is ambulatory glucose profile? The definition is that it's a consolidation of glucose data over several days or weeks. So you take an average of 14 days, think of it as an average a day for the patient, and it's like a snapshot for your patient's blood sugar and how it is varying over time. AGP gives a visual snapshot of a pattern occurring in the patient's glycemia, whether it be hyperglycemia, or if you want to measure in terms of glycemic variability. So we have already talked about this time in range. What do you need for an AGP? Well, you need a sensor, you need a reader, you need the sensor which is applied through an applicator on the back of the patient's arm, ideally that arm, because it won't give away. And the sensor is activated through a reader, which is at the moment is only provided to the healthcare professional. The patient does not have access to this AGP. So once we activate the reader, we get two graphs. We get 4 or 5 graphs, but 2 graphs that we are actually interested in. One is the AGP, which I'm going to be talking about, and the second is the daily glucose summary that the earlier speaker had alluded to. So the daily glucose summary is very attractive and very easy for the patient to understand because yellow is high, red is low. You have to have a time in range, which is gray zone. It's very easy for even a layman to understand the daily glucose summary. But the AGP is for the healthcare professional to interpret because it involves a lot of parameters or glycemic parameters, which I will explain to. So what is it? What is it different from the previous? How is it different from the previous CGM data? The previous CGM data generally used to give a daily pattern, and there used to be haphazard lines where we cannot make head or tail of it. What the AGP does is it takes off the outlier data. So we don't want the data when the patient has suddenly had a hypoglycemia due to a large meal or a sudden hypoglycemia because of a false insulin dose. So these outlier lines or outlier data are discarded, and we get a nice smooth graph, which will tell us where most of the patient's readings have been in the average 24 hours day, averaged over 14 days. It will also give an estimated A1C, which is about 7.2. Now, this is not a calculated HbA1c. This is an estimated A1C, which is reversed, exactly reversed from the formula of doing an estimated average glucose, and then you reverse it to get an estimated A1C. How is it produced? So the AGP is constructed via, the previous slide showed that all these are the patient's readings. At every 15 minutes, the sensor checks the data. It will put a dot onto this graph. Now, this graph correlates all the data and converts it into an AGP. So, how to interpret the AGP? Well, first is the dark blue line, which starts in the middle. That is the median that's the middle of all data. So that just means that. So the median is the line where if you put a dot at 12 p.m. or at 11 a.m., you can see, and you put a dot at a point where 50% of data is above and 50% of the data is below. Not mean, but the median data. So you join all the medians over time and you get a median line. Next comes the interquartile range, which is the blue zone, the blue zone that you're seeing. This gives the bottom 25% out, the top 25% out. So the 50% of the data that is lying within at that particular time, that gives the interquartile range. You join all the dots through the day, you get a interquartile range. The last line is the interdecile range, which is the light gray zone that you're seeing. Now this zone is basically just the 10% above, 10% below readings are excluded. So it gives about 80% of your daily average readings. Why is it important? Now we are talking about time in range where we say that 70% of your daily glucose targets have to be within range. This is a simple way of doing it. So if all of your curves are actually within the target zone, it might be 70 to 140 for a gestational diabetic, or it might be 70 to 180 for a normal type 2 diabetic. So if all these curves fall within range, you can assume that almost 80% of the patient's glycemic parameters are within target. So you really don't need another parameter to assess except this first AGP graph. So how to interpret? So that's how an AGP looks like, but how to interpret an AGP? So there are 4 parameters we have to take into account. First is the glycemic exposure. So the glycemic exposure is simply just how high are the sugars above your median line, above your above target line, which is 180. So at 2 particular points of the day, which is predominantly after breakfast and after lunch, this particular patient has a higher glycemic exposure. And there are some parameters to check for the glycemic exposure, which we can go on into in the AGP workshop, which will be done later. So the next parameter to assess is the glycemic variability. Again, this glycemic variability is at one particular time, how much is the glucose varying. So at 11 o'clock, the glucose can vary anywhere from around 320 to around 60. So the glycemic variability is almost 260. 320 minus 60 is 260. So this patient has a high glycemic variability after lunch. And generally, glycemic exposure is a measure of what the patient's treatment is. Glycemic variability is a measure of how the patient's compliance is, or other dietary and other factors. So for example, if he has not taken an insulin properly, or he's taken a heavier meal, or overcorrection of insulin in type 2 diabetes, this sort of variability can happen. So generally, we address the variability first and then the exposure. Then the stability. Now what's the stability? So let's say a patient's glucose at 10 o'clock is around 180. It is dropping to around 80 by lunchtime. So, and this is a common phenomena that we see for a lot of our patients, where they have a higher postprandial meal and then a higher postprandial glucose, and then it drops below lunch. So this particular patient has a negatively unstable curve at this point, and a positively unstable curve. That means sugars going up after meal. So this is the stability. That means how is the sugars varying through the day. Then last is the risk of hypoglycemia. But actually this is the first thing to be addressed. You know, how much of these curves are actually going below the target zone, which is quite easy to interpret. So what is how do we correlate to this time in range, which is what this topic is about. So simple, this patient has an average curve, which is the same curve, average running above 180 for quite significant amount of time. So simply, if the median is above the target zone, you can assume that the 50% of his values are above the target zone. If the upper border of the blue zone is above the target zone, you can say that 25% of his values are above. And so with the interdecile range as well. So for this patient, almost 80% of his targets glycemic measures are above his target zone for that particular time. So clearly this patient does not fall into the time in range. And if you look at, there is another way of looking at the time in range, which is the time in target. The sensor also gives a direct measure of how much of these parameters are within the target zone. So clearly this patient's targets are not within target. They are about 50, 60, 70, 59%, but certainly less than 70%. So what should a graph look like? So let's say this is another patient who has an A1C of 5.9%. He does have some hyperglycemia at the end of the day, but if you look at his time in range for this, if you assume, let's just assume what is the time in range for this patient, what would you guess it would be? So because most of his interdecile range are also within target. So I'm assuming it will be at least more than 80%, because its median is within the target, so 50% is anyway within target. The quartile range is also within target, so you can say that, so that's the 50%. If the interdecile range is also mostly within target, so almost 80% of his ranges, his values are within target. So that will be correlated in the time in target column in the daily glucose summary. So this patient has almost close to 82%, which is in the target range. So then coming to the cases now. So this is a 48-year-old lady who came to me with type 2 diabetes for the last 2 years. She has been on glimepiride and metformin, and she has a pretty decent fasting but uncontrolled postprandial sugar of 212. She is on glimepiride and metformin, and her HbA1c is 7.2%. So she's waking up with a headache every day. That not every day, but some days. So that's what made me think that she might have hypoglycemias during the night. So I put a glucose profile on. So as you can see, there is a significant down negatively unstable curve during the night, which means that she was having hypoglycemias almost 25 to 50% of the time at that night, and a hyperglycemia post breakfast. So there are different ways of treating this patient, because you can give acarbose and all, but if you're not doing a sensor application on this patient, if you have applied a sensor, you will have this knowledge of the hypoglycemia. That's where this A1C correlation, the HbA1c for this patient was 7.2, but rightly Dr. Banshi Sahu mentioned that the HbA1c doesn't take into account all the hypoglycemia. So if you take the hypoglycemias into account, the A1c comes to only 6.1%. So we changed this patient to a DPP4 inhibitor and metformin, and as you can see, the nighttime hypoglycemias have almost gone, but this was the initial lag-on phase of the sulfonylureas, and you get a better post-breakfast and post-prandial reduction in this case. So this is how an AGP can be used to bring the glucose targets into the target zone. The second case is of a 26-year-old primi gravida who was diagnosed with gestational diabetes and on the OGTT, and I put a 1-week AGP. So the AGP minimum you have to put it for 5 days. So you can do a 5-5-4 AGP also, or you can do 1 and 1 week and 1 week. So I put an AGP for this patient for 1 week, and this is how the profile looks like. So clearly this patient has a postprandial rise in sugars at meal times, so high glycemic exposure and high positively unstable curve predominantly after meals. Now why is this important? Because this patient may not benefit much from a metformin or a premixed insulin, because she's significantly having a dip in these curves, and this is without treatment. I've not started any treatment on her. So then once I've started around diet changes, and I've only given insulin aspart 4 units with breakfast and 4 units with dinner. So as you see, it's the postprandial spikes have significantly come down, and probably this patient will not have benefited much from metformin or a premixed insulin. So case 3, this I just wanted to highlight, because not just for interpretation purpose, not just for treatment purpose, but you can actually use the AGP to diagnose a few things. For example, this patient was sent to me directly from the obstetrician after she had an OGCT. So had a meal and then had a glucose, and the OGCT value was really high, 226, and the patient came alarming. And I said, well, let's not do a OGTT, let's just put a sensor and see how it goes. So as you see, most of the readings are actually within the target zone. In fact, this lady did not require any treatment at all. And as you see, the targets for the pregnancy will be different, and you can set this on the sensor itself before you start reading the data, from 70 to 140. So last case, this is an 8-year-old girl with a new type 1 diabetes that I put a sensor on. I just wanted to highlight the time in range first, because a lot of these parameters, as you can see, the time in range is much less than 70%. And time in range is a number, whereas this AGP is a visual snapshot. So if you can understand how the AGP looks like after some time and correlate with the time in range, it becomes easier to not use a number. You look at just like you look at the ECG, you look at an AGP, say, okay, this is high, and you can make interpretation from then. So after a lot of insulin dose adjustments and every 3-4 days, we got the most of the parameters under control, and the glucose targets were almost 100% by the end of the 14 days. So if you average the time in range for the 2 weeks, it is about 60%, but if you take the average of the second 7 days, it will probably have more than 70%, which is what is required for this type 1 diabetic. So last case, so this was the AGP of that girl. I did not have a collated AGC, but if you see the first top AGP will be the AGP sort of in the second week, it would have dropped down to this graph between. Last case, a 70-year-old male. This is the other box in the high-risk type 2 diabetics. What are high-risk type 2 diabetics? Patients who have fear of hypoglycemia or already have hypoglycemia, already have seizures, established end organ complications. So you don't want a really tight control. And the time in range specifies that, the time in range target specify that 50% of values are enough. 50% targets are actually enough for these patients. So this was a 70-year-old gentleman I saw. He was diabetic for 20 years. He was having history of absence seizures, and some of these were triggered with hypoglycemia, and he was also having a CKD. So I put a glucose sensor on him. He was just on a small dose of gliclazide and a small dose of linagliptin. So I put a small dose, put a sensor on him and monitored him. So after I reviewed these charts, as you can see, almost 50%, although 50% of his values are going above the target zone in the night, it is much less than 250. So this is a high-risk patient where if 50% of your targets are within, values are within the target zone, you leave them alone. This patient was having a nighttime meal at this time every day. He was so fearful of the hypoglycemia that he was eating much more than what he was. And I didn't do anything else because although the values are up, his A1C is still 6.3 and he's not having any hypoglycemia and still within the recommended targets as per the new consensus guidelines. So these were some of the cases that I have. So in conclusion, AGP is a new dimension for measuring various glycemic indices. Target range, of course, as my previous speakers alluded, it's a new target for normoglycemia, and there are individualized targets for for different sets of type 2 or type 1 diabetic patients. So in simple words, AGP should fall within the TIR. And if we aim for this, and we can have a good glucose control for our patient. Thank you. Thank you very much for allowing me.
Thank you, Dr. Kalyan, for the wonderful talk. And now invite the third speaker, Dr. Manoj Chawla. He will actually be discussing some cases. And I hope that the audience can also interact. The mic is there, and all the panelists also will interact. And let's try to solve some of these cases. You've seen what is TIR. Dr. Banshi Sabu showed you TIR versus A1C. Then Dr. Kalyan showed you the AGP graph. Now let's try to whether we can interpret some of these cases.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. So at the outset, let me thank Dr. Unnikrishnan for getting the discussion of AGP and TIR to the main halls, and we are not somewhere in a smaller workshop room. Though having said that, for those who are really interested, we're going to be having a much more concentrated workshop on this subject at 4:30 this afternoon on the first floor. So those of you who are really interested and want to interact more should join us there. Time for some of you who are really interested and have been doing AGP to come ahead. The next 15 minutes with the panel we'll be spending on understanding AGP more. It's not about what treatment change you made, whether that was right or not. Everybody may have a different viewpoint in what treatment you may offer to the patient, but this is more about the interpretation of AGP and the time in range. So I'm starting with, and I have 4 cases to discuss, and I specifically chose 2 with type 2 and 2 with type 1. A lot of us believe that in type 1 there is a clear advantage, but what about type 2? Believers believe that type 2 is one of those places where this should be used as much, if not more. But clearly, let's look at some of these cases. So here I have an individual, 38-year-old female, Mrs. XYZ, on orals plus insulin. So she's already on vildagliptin, metformin, some glimepiride, some dapagliflozin, and degludec. Now this lady has an HbA1c of 9.4, as we can see on the slides. Clearly, she's not at target. And typically in the clinical practice, you may want to look at the readings. The 2 readings that she has is 123/203 fasting PP, and the other reading she's done again is 120 and 160. So if you look at the lab reports, they don't see too much out of place. She's not doing much of SMBG in spite of being on insulin and multiple orals. And the A1C is 9.4, not ready to increase insulin. She feels every time she does increase any dose, she's going into hypoglycemia. So are we fair in offering her to do a CGM, if I ask the panel? Right? If she would have been doing a SMBG more frequently, maybe we could avoid, but is there something else we can think of?
Yeah. So definitely worth putting on a CGM because, as you said, the fasting and post-lunch values do not seem to be correlating with what her HbA1c is. That's the first thing that comes
Sure.
to my mind.
So
we have to look at
So that's easier coming from here. These are believers. If there's any atheist or in the audience about
Well, another reason is, again, I'm a believer, so in that sense that we should be using this because this is a very important patient education and awareness tool. Now, this patient is on Degludec and has got a high A1C. Obviously, there's something going wrong and you may need to escalate therapy, and how are you going to convince a patient that some change in therapy is needed because she's clearly refusing to take more medicines. So I think this is a wonderful way to tell the patients for them to see their own sugars and become aware.
absolutely. So if there's anybody who wants to express a thought, even before I move on to the CGM value, does anybody here in the audience have any other opinion that why do the CGM, why do the AGP, it's futile, it's
I
expensive?
think we should ask those who are not using FGM, how will you deal with this?
Yes,
type of
please
patient?
come and
I mean,
talk.
That's the best way of.
This is not an MD exam, so please feel free to come and tell your views, even if
So
it's
your
against
patient is a
AGP.
And
9.4,
whether Dr.
how will you
Unni
do it?
agrees with you or not, lunch will still be served to you. So, so if I heard it right, the doctor here is talking about, have you made sure that you're not missing out on anything, the dietary history? Maybe this patient is just having 4 or 5 Marie biscuits or any biscuits, if I heard it right, and is indulging in the diet. Have you ruled out that that's not happening? Well, I would believe that that's being ruled out. You're looking into the diet. This is a patient who is somebody with diabetes for several years, being on these multiple drugs and insulin. Unfortunately, it's a patient who is not willing to do as much SMBG as we would like. So I think that's probably an argument here would be that before considering this, why not ask this patient to do multiple times SMBG? Maybe we'll be able to see the larger picture. Not as good as the CGM, but at least somewhat. Unfortunately, you have these patients who are extremely petrified and say that I barely take my insulin shots, so doing SMBG is not happening. So it's one of those patients. So having said that, let's see what the profile we see. Now,
Excuse me,
even
sir.
before, sorry.
Yes,
we have somebody there.
I want to make one comment there that A1C is more than 9 and fasting and postprandial not in that much bad range. So I would like to ask whether have you checked the hemoglobin level and red cell indices of this patient, whether he is in any iron deficiency or
Fair,
any other.
fair. So
uh,
your point is about the limitations of HbA1c itself. Have we verified that this HbA1c is actually genuine and we are not missing? Yes, I think this is a patient whose HbA1c was repeated from the laboratory and our point of care system. And unfortunately, a patient whose multiple HbA1c over the last few months have remained in the higher level. And so that point has been ruled out, but a very valid point that before we do anything ahead, sometimes there would be limitations of an HbA1c, and that, whether it's a lab error or something else where there's a mismatch, you should probably repeat an HbA1c and rule out those factors. Before we even get onto this, now, if there is somebody here who's been hearing talks on AGP and was very alert in hearing to what Dr. Kalyan said, what Dr. Unni and Dr. Bansi said, would somebody want to interpret this AGP for me in terms of exposure, variability, and stability? Right? The experts here know it. I'm asking for a volunteer from the audience who's been listening to this. If you can help me comment on this patient's AGP profile in terms of variability, exposure, variability, stability, and hypoglycemia. Anybody? Come on. Right? Yes. Can you introduce yourself, doctor, and then help us?
Dr. Sandeep Desai from Valsad, Gujarat. The exposure seems to be very high because the median is above the range, so it is almost around 70-80% the exposure. And the variability around that 0 to 4 is very high.
You mean 0 to 4 a.m.?
AM. From starting from 0, it is slightly high. and also it is the variability is around 6 p.m. also it seems to be high. At 2 p.m. again it is high, and I think the stability not so bad. There are no
Okay,
curves,
okay.
the stability.
Any
And
hypoglycemia
there
that
is
you
no
can see, Sandeep?
hypoglycemic
There's no
event.
hypoglycemia.
No hypoglycemic
Okay, so before I try and interpret it, maybe I'm not as good as everybody here, but if there's somebody else who wants to interpret this, or does everybody agree with what Sandeep said? Largely people are nodding. So let me again just reiterate what Dr. Kalyan taught us here. One, exposure. So exposure is clearly what you're talking about, the sugars which are rising above the time in range. So this individual does, we can see, have higher exposure. The sugars, the median, as Sandeep clearly pointed out, is going much higher than the readings that we want it to be. So much higher exposure. The second aspect is variability. Now when we say variability, it essentially means day-to-day variability. That means if I look at 12 o'clock in the afternoon and I look at this range, which is over a 14-day period, is the person fluctuating too much at that point in time on a day-to-day basis? That is variability. So if I was to see 12 o'clock here, the sugars are probably varying from somewhere between 170, 180 to about 200 to 10. Will I call this extremely variable? So this patient does not in fact have very, very high variability. In simple words, if I have to define variability, you're talking about the breadth of the python here. So let's look at all AGPs as a snake which is moving from the left side of the room to the right side of the room. The thinner the snake, the better for you. Once this python has had a meal, it's going to go wider. And the wider the portion in the day where the python is still digesting the food is the point which you call variable. So that is the point. So the moment you start seeing a fat blob somewhere in between, that is variability. That means at that point, in those 24 hours, this patient is being more variable at that point in time. The third part is stability. What is stability? Stability is the intraday variability. That means this patient, is he stable? Or is she stable rather? So this patient is clearly not stable in terms of the glucose profile. You see the sugars at 12 o'clock in the night at 270, dropping to about at 6 a.m. to about 130. Again, there are some post-meal spikes and post-dinner again shooting up. So this patient is not stable in that sense because there is way too much intraday variability. So these are the 3 points we spoke about. Variability, so look at the breadth of the python, look at exposure, how much above the time in range, and then look at the stability, which is how much from time to time. And this is important because when we get down to treating the patient, the dictum is first, even before you get to the exposure, the first principle is decrease the patient's variability, which means if the patient is somewhere being way too variable, either through means of lifestyle changes or specific drug changes, get the patient's variability less. The second is get the patient more stable. That means I have to use means of get this more flatter, even if it remains in the higher range, even if the exposure is high. And the third thing finally is for me to target the exposure and get the sugars down. Why is this important? Does somebody from the audience want to tell me why is it important to correct the variability and the stability before I reduce the exposure? If not, I will move to the experts to guide me why should this be done before, why should the variability and stability be taken care of before exposure? Kalyan, you want to help us?
So the variability will actually, if let's say at any given particular point of time, so at about 10 p.m. this patient is having a significant postprandial rise. So the stability is not good at that point, but if the variability is not actually taken care of in the first place, you could end up not treating the right parameter in the first place. So firstly, if you get the dietary and other lifestyle measures in control, if you reduce the variability, then your particular targeted therapy of what you are trying to treat at that pre-dinner meal will be much more effective. Is that correct?
Right. So in other sense, if I was to just reduce the exposure for this patient, right? Somebody tells me this patient's sugars are way too high. The HbA1c is 9.2%, so I have to increase the dose. If I have to just blindly increase the dose of Tresiba for this patient or increase the oral dose, that means I'm trying to get the whole thing down. What will happen if I bring the exposure down? There will be hypoglycemia, because let's not forget, it's not only this part and this part which is going to come down, the whole graph is going to come down, which means unless I have straightened this out, this is going to go into hypoglycemia. So even from today's entire session, the takeaways would be the importance of time in range and how to interpret the AGP. And remember again the principles of reducing the variability, improving the stability, reducing the exposure, avoiding hypoglycemia. And then you've gotten your marks fully correct for today's session.
Come to the mic, madam.
Sir, before we go ahead, can you just still explain the difference between stability and variability? Because we feel that variability is the variation, and therefore when the variability is more, stability is less. That is what we feel. So the
Okay,
concept
so
is not clear.
Fine. I'll try that, but then I would urge you in the interest of time to join us for the 4:30 session up, and we are actually doing it more graphically there than here. I'll explain again. Variability means how variable are you at the same point on different days, right? And I'll explain that if I have the time with the next slide again. When you see somebody who's far more variable, the stability means how much you are fluctuating at different time points in the same day. So when you look at the AGP, this is a nodal day for 24-hour day we have created out of 14 days. So let me explain that with the next case, the time.
Manoj, may I make a point?
Yes, of course.
So I don't know if I've got this right, but I think Dr. Manoj is trying to say that if you look at stability, we are talking about intraday variability. So there are two types of variability. There is intraday variability, which means variability within the day.
Yes.
And there is inter-day variability. That means variability between the days. Now the median, the line you see in between, gives you the intraday variability, which is also stability. Am I right? A marker of stability, would you say that?
Yes.
Yes. And the two shaded areas, the dark blue and the light blue, gives you the interday variability. That means between Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. So these are the two concepts you need to be aware of.
So let me take you through this again. If I take you through this line, this part that it's coming down, this median line in dark blue, this is talking to us about the lack of stability, which is intraday variability. This is being variable within the day. And the breadth of the AGP talks to us about the interday variability, right? So I hope these two concepts, now if we were to call it interday variability and intraday variability may be more confusing, and hence these two terms, that variability is kept for interday and stability is kept for within the 24-hour variability, right? Okay. So the second part of this is irrelevant about what the treatment change was done. Now, there was something that we did, and there may be something else that Dr. Unni does or Bansi does. I think that's not the discussion. So we move to the other case.
But the Manoj is here, important thing is, suppose this patient, you have not gone for a FGM. This patient with 9.5, how will you treat? Now seeing this FGM, it shows that it's a post-dinner hyperglycemia. And this patient was not doing monitoring, self-monitoring, patient was not doing only the post-breakfast and post-lunch, and most of the time patient fasting sugar 126, 163. And you know, the normal physician would like to now intensify either the Tresiba because fasting was 126. If he is going to do, everything will come down and patient may end up in hypoglycemia. And if you are not telling the patients even before FGM, a multiple time self-monitoring which is equally required for this patient, to checking the post-dinner and pre-dinner or midnight sugar, you will able to do it, and then whatever the changes which you will do. So I mean, that's very important. Even before FGM also we were treating all these type of patients, but there the monitoring is very, very important, and without monitoring, I mean, just increasing the dose of any molecule will decrease the, will increase the chances of hypo.
So I think 8 o'clock this patient is having dinner, and if you see 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, it's really going up. So that dinner, up to 2 o'clock, midnight. So coming back in the night and having that dinner, I think if you are able to target the dinner, even a diet, and of course insulin, I think that's a very, what Dr. Bansi and Dr. Manoj saying, maybe only increasing the degludec isn't enough. You'll have to also look at
Absolutely.
the prandial effect. Yes.
So let's understand this. This lady was afraid. She said, if I increase, I start experiencing hypoglycemia. Now, clearly there is no hypoglycemia. So one, the FGM here is allowing us to convince and show the patient that there is no hypoglycemia. Second, we are clearly identifying that the dinner component is what is the basic crux, because it's that post-dinner and which remains high till almost 2, 3 a.m. in the night is the bigger culprit in the whole day. So ideally, this patient requires more short-acting insulin at dinner time to cover it. And as I said, she was petrified of more needles and pricks. What we could try and do was shifted her from her degludec to ideg-asp as certain component. Not the ideal, I would say, because her requirement for short-acting is going to be much more. But this was one step at least towards her accepting it and trying to help besides other changes that we could do. Quickly, so Unni can stop me whenever the time is up, but we could continue. So this is another young girl, 19-year-old, who was on MDI, shifted to insulin pump just about 4 months before the FGM. As on a follow-up, her HbA1c came as 7.2. She used to be around 8.5. And this was the first HbA1c after she started her insulin pump. Now, clearly, for an insulin pump patient, there's no brainer that you would want to do more CGMs because you need to identify what to change, especially in the basal dosing setup. The boluses, you train the patient to do more carbohydrate counting and manage that. But for the basals, it's more important to start seeing the profile. So this is, again, another case where this was done. Now, somebody to comment about this young girl's AGP profile. Do we have somebody in the audience to come ahead? Quickly, please, otherwise I will request in the interest. Okay, we have,
Yes,
please
there
introduce yourself. And
I'm Dr. Salve from Ahmednagar. There is too much variability, even interday also and intraday also.
so the first thing that you're saying is this patient in terms of variability is very variable, because clearly you can see that this python has had a large meal, right? So clearly we can see the breadth, and across, this is throughout. It's far variable throughout. So this patient is more variable. The second aspect that you made is in terms of intraday variability, or what we called as stability.
Stability, yes.
Now, is this patient really that unstable as compared to the previous patient, doctor?
No, it is less stable.
No, right?
More stable compared
So
to less patient.
clearly, if everybody is getting the concept right now, variability is more for this patient. Stability is better as compared to the previous patient. There is some intraday variability, but not to that extent. What about the exposure? Exposure is not bad, right? Again, when you saw from the previous patient, this exposure is not bad. You look at the median almost falls within your time in range. It's the other aspect which is going out. So here, what is your target aim for this patient?
Daytime sugar control is more important here.
So you want to
controlling PP sugars.
You want to look at a little bit of stability, and more importantly, you want to decrease the variability, right? How do you decrease the variability for a type 1 on pump? The experts here want to help me about. So it's extremely difficult with type 1 variability. One other important aspect which I want you to drive is when you see patients who are variable, clearly you want to talk to the patient more about their day-to-day diet, their day-to-day pattern, their day-to-day exercise, the carb counting that they are doing, the bolus that they are taking. But one other important takeaway for all of you should be the interdecile range. Again, well explained by the previous speaker, that this is the median. The shaded blue portion is the interquartile range from 25th to 75th percentile, which is where 50% of the readings remain. And the far shaded portion is the interdecile range, where 80% of the readings remain. So this portion, let's understand that 10% has been taken off. The 10th percentile and the 90th percentile are not even being seen in the AGP. So this is another important takeaway. When you see the AGP in a flash glucose monitoring report, if you don't identify hypoglycemia here, it does not mean that patient did not have hypoglycemia. Because if the patient has had just 1 or 2 episodes of hypoglycemia, you will see that in the daily charts and not in the AGP. Because if it lied within the 10th percentile, it would not come in your AGP report. Right? So sometimes we have this habit of looking at AGP and saying no hypoglycemia. No. Still go back and see your daily reports and you may see 1 or 2 odd hypoglycemia. But importantly, the point I was coming to is, if this portion is very wide, this last shaded portion, and in some patients, especially type 1, you will see much wider shaded portion. That means not the drug to change. This portion will still allow you to modify some dosages. But the larger, the less shaded portion, this part, if it is wider, it is purely to do with behavioral changes. When you see that part contributing to the variability, then you need to sit down with the patient more and talk about how different behavior in terms of snacking at night or eating something wrong, that part is going to be much more related to patient's behavior.
So I just want to highlight that point, which is a very critical point Dr. Manoj made, that the dark blue area, the dark blue shaded area, it could respond to changes in therapy, and the light blue area, which is the interdecile part, that suggests that behavioral modification, diet, exercise, stress, those are the areas to change.
Absolutely.
That's the very important point which Dr. Manoj made. I just want to re-emphasize that.
Sure. So again, for this young girl, changes made in the basal therapy, a better training on carb count, and so on and so forth. Now this is again a 24-year-old.
I think Dr. Manoj, that will be the last case. You can quickly go through it.
Yes, okay. So this is somebody who's on basal bolus, 24, diabetic for last several years, saw us first now. HbA1c is 9.9, was taking almost 120 units of insulin, not being seen any doctor, but typically like a type 1 increasing the dosage. So A1c is 9.9, and see the dosage, almost 96 units of insulin in the whole day. This is the profile. This is the AGP profile for this young man of 24-year-old. Huge appetite, increasing the dosage, no exercise, and just stepping up the dose. But what is happening here? As we are running out of time, and this is the last case that I'm showing, somebody wants to interpret this for us again. I wish Uni had kept prizes to give away, like 2 nights at Marriott, Pune.
Next year, perhaps. It's a good idea.
Right.
Yes.
So, anybody wants to interpret this? Quickly, madam, please. You can come to this mic. Okay. You
Yes,
have it.
Dr. Sonali.
Yeah.
There is a lot of exposure, as we can see. Then variability is quite high. And if you see in terms of stability, it is also not there. So totally bad kind of a report we can see.
Excellent, Sonali. So the reason I put up this case is this is the works. This gives you everything that you have wanted to see in AGP. This patient has huge exposure, right? It's going high also very much. It is extremely variable, right? See the breadth of this. Also see the issues with behavioral pattern in this young man, right? So huge exposure, huge variability. Stability, no, it's going from, the median is going from about 240 to about 100 within a day. So it's hugely intraday variable and non-stable. And also finally, you can identify the hypoglycemia also. So this patient really requires help. And this could be done with better improvement in lifestyle, change of MDI, more training to the patient, or even considering the insulin pump. So clearly this, and I'm not getting into the treatment, but this is something which extremely difficult to identify. If I go back, the patient doing some SMBG was not helping us. 96 units of insulin and 9.9 HbA1c in a 24-year-old man taking 4 shots a day is not acceptable, right? Final comments from the panel before we wind up.
So I'd like to just take this opportunity to thank Dr. Manoj, Dr. Banshi, and Dr. Kalyan. And we close this session and we meet again. But ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause to all my colleagues.